we bring tribute to the late George Bizos, and joining us now is Ntate Popo Molefe as well as Ntate Mosiuoa Lekota. Now, George Bizos represented both of them when they were members of the United Democratic Front in the 1980s. Ntate, good to have you with us this afternoon, although not on very pleasant circumstances. Let me start with you, Ntate Molefe. What are your memories of Ntate Bizos? What is it that you remember most from him? He represented you during the Delmas treason trial, and you also had a subsequent relationship with him even thereafter.
Tammy, I'd like to take this opportunity to convey our deepest condolences to the Bizos family at what is a huge loss to the family. I got to, well, I had known Mr. Bizos simply as an advocate who was defending all human rights cases, but got to know him closely during the Delmas treason trial from around April 1985, as we were preparing to defend ourselves against the charges laid of high treason. I got to know him as a man with extensive knowledge of history, love for Greek philosophy, and the history of South African struggle as well. Well-read lawyer, so he was combining both politics and law in the struggle for in his work. He was what one could say a repository of knowledge on South Africa. But he also was a person with a great sense of humor. He would crack jokes, and he was a great storyteller as well.
Sorry, Ntate Lekota, let me bring you in here. How did it come about that Ntate Bizos actually became your representative during that infamous Delmas treason trial?
Well, in this regard, our history with Ntate Molefe is just the same, actually, because I did not know him. I got to know about George Bizos when I was on Robben Island the first time. And then from the senior leaders that were there, whom he had defended and all of that. And I must say that, you know, from the stories told about him, you could see that this is somebody that is outstanding. So when we were arrested, and then we were advised that he's going to be defending us with other Shaskasi, we found ourselves in the presence, indeed, of a towering giant. I may just say this. We used to call him the elephant, something like this, characterizing, frankly, our experience of how we sensed him. He was a good storyteller, as Ntate Molefe said. You know, when he told, and I never forget this, when he told about how at the age of about 17, he and his father arrived on the shores of South Africa, having escaped from the Mediterranean in Greece and come through the ships and all of that. It was at the time of the First World War. And they were running away, escaping, I don't know from what. When he told about that story, and the arrival here, you could see somebody who came from struggle and found himself in a struggle and immediately was already part of the struggle that was being waged. And ultimately you couldn't tell when he was talking about the struggle in Greece or telling about the struggle here. And this man was very passionate. He spoke and he would explain the experiences of others as his own experiences. He spoke about the issues of South Africa And you really know when he had become South African and then that this was also his struggle. I think that we have lost really one of the greatest South Africans our country has ever known. And then, of course, when he took over, when they started defending us, they started by telling us about how Bram Fischer and Iranji, those lawyers of the treason trial, and that they chose different roles because he was the cross-examiner and Arthur Shaskalson was the person who put together the arguments and debated and argued the case and educated the court and everybody else how to understand what the situation was. And from that point onward, you know, he really, every time he said there's a witness, he stood up, was ready to cross-examine that witness. Even the judge in our case commented at some point about how he seemed to know everything that the witness had said. And when he was asked to cross-examine, he never asked for a chance to go and study the evidence or something. He stood up and immediately asked the first question. And he went on, and the judge was just puzzled how he could do this. And the judge, in our case, commented about this. And so, even with all of us, he spoke about us, he spoke about our evidence. Of course, we made statements to him. But you could feel almost like some of the accused were themselves articulating their own positions.
Tate Lekota, thank you so much for a great recollection there. Ndate Molefe, you know, Ndate Bizos is being positioned and spoken of as a man of great compassion, that the struggle that he himself went through as a young boy, arriving in South Africa as a refugee, he took that struggle and he could relate to the South African struggle as well. But earlier on, when you were describing him, you were also talking about the fact that he was a man of great humor, a good sense of humor. What are some of the key lessons that you have learned from Ndate Bizos? Ndate Molefe, are you still with us?
Yes, I am with you. Well, I cut my comment short earlier on because I wasn't sure how you're managing the interaction. But let me say that Mr. Bizos, Advocate Bizos, was a man of high work ethic. And he had tremendous discipline. He is the kind of a person who was very loyal to us as his clients. And he demonstrated to us the value of that honesty, integrity, the value of selflessness, because he's the kind of a person who would come today and every day, traveling long distances to Modabi prison in Benoni, and would sit there with us over weekends, paging through several thousands or millions of documents of the United Democratic Front, which the police had collected and were using as evidence against us. So he was also a man who believed, as many people have said, in justice and in human rights. And I think his commitment to human rights is born out of his own experience that Mr. Lekota has referred to, of a young man of 13 having to run from Greece, landing in South Africa in the days of colonial South Africa under the British Empire. And he lived there to see the creation of the apartheid system in 1948 and became pretty much part of the resistance to that apartheid system. And when one looks at the period of his service to South Africa and struggle, I mean, in his struggle for freedom, you're looking at 7 decades. And as a lawyer for fighting injustices in the courts of South Africa, he probably did that for over 66 years in various trials that we spoke about. When I was Premier of the Northwest, and it was shortly after we had created the new democratic government, I said to George Bizos, George, we have committed ourselves to reconciliation and creating government of national unity. One of the things that I want to do as a demonstration of my commitment to reconciliation is to organize an important event in Mafikeng. And I want to bring together my former court trialists in the Delmas treason trial, the defense team, but also the investigating team, the police who arrested us, and the judge who sentenced us, including the prosecutor, so that we could celebrate and demonstrate that this is a new South Africa we are building. And in this new South Africa, we are burying the past, and we're going to work together to shape that new South Africa. At the beginning, Judge Van Dijkhoff was refusing to come. But I had an Afrikaner lady in the Northwest who finally persuaded him to come. And when he spoke at that meeting, he said, well, he didn't know that things were as bad as they were, but because he believed that we lived in glass houses with the glass walls, we could see the people on the other side, but we could not hear each other. At the end of that speech, George Bizos says to me, you know, this man has lost a golden opportunity. You have demonstrated to him, given him an olive branch. He should have welcomed that and apologized for the wrongs that he did for sentencing you to Robben Island, sending you to Robben Island when he knew that you were not guilty. And he said, well, he seems like he's a lost cause. And that is George Bizos for you, a man who throughout believed in the rule of law, believed in justice and human rights for all of our people, and was loyal to the end. And these things that I'm talking about, integrity, loyalty, honesty, high work ethic, were some of the hallmarks that defined his character. And probably the monuments.
Ndate Molefe, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it at that for today. But thank you so much for a very detailed and graphic account of the man that was Ndate George Bizos, as well as the impact that he's had not only in your life, but in the life of our country. So much appreciated. Thank you, Ndate Lekota there, and Ndate Mosiuoa Lekota, and Ndate Popo Molefe as well for your time. They are two of the big three part of the Delmas trial. It's actually recorded as one of the longest trials in South African history, ran from 85 all the way to 89.